In this video, I'm going to be reviewing an art book that's going to take you back to the roaring 1920s and 1930s, back to the traditional animation styles of early Disney and Warner Brothers. So stick around. Hey guys, Craig here, back for another installment of Art Book Review. Now this particular art book review is one that I've been wanting to do for a while now. I am a huge fan of traditional animation. In fact, you can find animation cell art hanging on pretty much every wall in my home, and it only takes a quick glance to see the influence of traditional animation in my own artwork. Now I personally take a lot of inspiration from animations that were created in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. But the book that I'm about to review is going to take us all the way back to the 1930s, where it all began. Because this month's art book review is on the art of Cuphead. Let's check it out. Now when I talk about Cuphead being influenced by traditional animation, I'm referring to the early Disney from around the 1930s, as well as the early Looney Tune characters from around that same time. If you ever watched the really old Warner Brothers animations, and I'm talking about the era that probably even preceded the Looney Tunes, the art style of Cuphead really draws from that time period. Now for those of you who aren't familiar with Cuphead, just by looking at this artwork, it's easy to assume that this is concept art from some animated kids television show from the 1930s. But it's not. It's actually artwork from a video game that was released around 2017 that was created by the brothers Chad and Jared Moldenhauer. They just happen to be really big fans of old school traditional animation. Now this type of illustration is perfect for those of you who are just getting into drawing. This is the style of illustration that I grew up on. Only I grew up on animation that came out about 20 years after this style, but it was still all the same studios creating it. Whether it was Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck from Disney, Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig from Warner Brothers, or Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones from Hanna-Barbera. They all use this traditional thick black line art filled in with solid colors. In later years, some of the studios started adding in highlights and shadows to the illustrations. I think it was actually Hanna-Barbera that started doing this first. But as the animation process became a little more streamlined, all of the studios started doing it. Now, even though Cuphead draws from the earlier animation style of the 1930s, they do use highlights and shadows in their artwork. So I guess you could say that they're more of a modern hybrid of the traditional 1930s animation style. Either way, this art book is a great place to get your feet wet in illustration. Now, most illustrators will tell you that the most important part of a character is the expression. The eyes, nose, and mouth are what draw the viewer's attention first. So it doesn't matter how good your character is drawn, if you get the expression wrong, your character is wrong. And that's what I love about the Cuphead character art. It doesn't matter whether their body characters are drawn really complex or super simple. The level of attention and detail in the expression is exactly the same, and that's a sign of great character illustration. The artists that draw Cuphead and all of its characters have got this art style down to a T. If you watch any of the cartoons that I mentioned earlier that were created in the 40s and 50s, the background illustrations were drawn exactly the same as the character art was. It was basically line art filled in with solid colors. But back in the 30s, the backgrounds were created with more of a painterly style, like traditional oil paintings. There was a lot of blending and gradients and highlights and shadows, which was a stark contrast to the simplistic character art that was being animated over top of it. The artwork of Cuphead is no different. There are some incredible background paintings in this book. They duplicated that 1930s animation style perfectly. If you were to put one frame of the artwork of Cuphead next to a still screenshot from some animated cartoon from the 1930s, most people wouldn't be able to tell them apart. If you're someone who struggles with turnarounds for characters, the art of Cuphead can really help you with that. There are so many rough character sketches in this book, it's crazy. And not only do you get to see the characters from different perspectives, but they also show you the development of the character at the same time, so you can really get a sense of their thought process while they were creating these characters. One of the other aspects of the 1930s animation that Cuphead artists really nailed was the character attitudes. If you watch old animations from that time, you'll probably notice that all of the characters only have three emotions: overly happy, heartbreakingly sad, or pissed right off. And that's it. There was nothing in between. And if you go through all of the character art in this book, it's those same 3 expressions. I love traditional animation art. As I said earlier, I have animation cells hanging on pretty much every wall of my home. And it was tough for me when all of the major animation studios started following John Lasseter and Pixar down the path of 3D animation. Now don't get me wrong, I love 3D animation. I worked with it for over a decade, but it was difficult to see this art style being cast aside. This is why it's so great when young guys like Chad and Jared decide to give this antiquated style of artwork new life. This style of illustration has had a huge impact on my life as well as my drawing style. And it could have that same effect on future generations of illustrators as well. But for it to have that effect on future artists, it needs to be in front of them. And this is why I think that the art of Cuphead is a must for any new illustrator's art book library. Well, there you have it. Another incredible art book, The Art of Cuphead. Now, if you'd like to add this book to your own personal library, I have an affiliate link to it in the description below. And if you should choose to use my link to purchase your book, not only do you get this incredible art book, but you also at no extra cost to you help to support my channel, which allows me to continue making free content like this for you. So for that, I thank you. Also, be sure and let me know in the comments section below what your favorite animation style is. If you'd like to see more of my art book reviews, I'll have a link to my art book review playlist at the end of this video. If this is your first time to my channel and you're not quite sure what it's all about, be sure and check out my playlist on how to monetize your hobby. You can find a link to it right here. Until next time, take care.